Greetings from Tokyo, my friends. How are you doing? This is Daisuke Beppu, and today I would like to continue with my discussion of the films of Dario Argento. This time, my friends, we are talking about an incredibly important and very special film. One of my favorites, Suspiria. (1977), directed by Dario Argento, and this was based off a screenplay that's credited to Dario Argento and Daria Nicolodi, starring Jessica Harper. This is a very famous film. It's about a dance school in Germany and some mysterious goings-on at this particular dance school in Germany. And when a young American girl named Susie Banyan goes to the school and enrolls in the dance school, some strange events, some very terrible and violent and shocking events begin occurring. And so therein lies the mystery of the film Suspiria, filled with much menace and supernatural creepiness that is sure to both entertain and frighten. So, without further ado, let me continue on with this discussion of Suspiria by looking at the particular release that I have. So this is the Blu-ray limited edition release from Synapse Films. I was able to get this when it was originally released. As you know, it comes in this lovely steelbook type case. Really lovely, really nice design, really odd and captivating artwork, if I do say so myself. And there's the back there, and if we open it up, there we go. So there are the discs inside. I've just gone ahead and taken out these inserts that are also available as well. So here's a Synapse Films catalog, and here is a book, which is very nice, right there, and very nice indeed. So, and in the back there is a breakdown of the soundtrack, because the compact disc, the CD soundtrack, is also included among the discs here. So this has, of course, 3 discs. So it has the 2 Blu-rays and 1 CD. And so the first Blu-ray is of the film itself. This is described as being the original, uncut, uncensored Italian 35mm camera negative, exclusively done by Synapse Films, with color correction supervised and approved by Suspiria director of photography Luciano Tavoli. It's very important, I think. And there is also an audio commentary track, 2 of them actually. Very great. Both commentary tracks are really excellent. Then there is also a 30-minute visual essay called Do You Know Anything About Witches? Then there is a featurette on the German locations from Suspiria called Susie in Nazi Germany. Then there is a documentary called A Sigh from the Depths, 40 Years of Suspiria. Then there's Olga's story, an interview with star Barbara Magnolfi, so she plays Olga. And there's also theatrical trailers, TV spots, and radio spots. And there's also the International Classics English Breathing Letters opening credit sequence from the US release. Yes, really wonderful. Oh yes, I should say also that the film itself, you can watch it in the English or you can watch it in the Italian. So that's also very nice if you're interested in what it sounds like in the Italian. And there's also the CD that's included, the Goblin soundtrack. and there is also the booklet, which I just showed. So this is really a marvelous release, really well done. Just for those of you who are interested there, I also happen to have the DVD from Anchor Bay that was released a while back. So this is also limited, so I had mine. Mine was mine is numbered 9,876 out of 60,000. And so this is a release that's just so close to my heart. I really love this, and it has a really nice documentary on this. A really nice documentary. It's called Suspiria 25th Anniversary, an all-new 52-minute documentary featuring Dario Argento, Dario Nicolodi, and others. A really wonderful documentary, actually. I would recommend this release just for that documentary alone. That is the release, and so I would now suggest to you that if you have not seen the film Suspiria, please stop this video right now, because I'm going to be discussing specific details about this really remarkable film. And the last thing I want to do is to spoil the experience for you, because you should watch this film as spoiler-free as possible. Really, you should watch it as spoiler-free as possible, because it is a knockout of a film. Okay, so you're still here. So that means you know what the film is about, or you don't mind being spoiled. In any event, let us talk about Suspiria. Where to begin with Suspiria? Where to begin with Suspiria? I don't know. I really don't know. I suppose I could start by saying that it is a film that is so important to me in my film education growing up. I remember seeing it for the first time on, I think it was VHS, and it was it was quite the eye-opener. And it was shocking to me then, and it still remains to me a very shocking film. And I just remember watching those first 10 or 15 minutes of the film when I was a kid, and I was just terrified. I was absolutely terrified. I think I cried, actually. I was so scared I was crying, and I had to stop the tape, and I was actually physically affected after I saw those first 15 minutes of the film, that I couldn't go on. And you know how the film is. It has that just thunderous opening, and all these events take place in the rain, and Pat Hingle and all that stuff, and boom, all the music is pulsating, and it's just real rock and roll, wild roller coaster ride, and then boom, it just cuts to daylight, and the blind man Daniel and his dog. You remember that sudden lull in the movie when that happens. And I remember when that scene came up, and Daniel with him walking his dog, I was just shivering, and I just cried. I remember that, because I was so affected, and I was scared, and I was quite traumatized, actually, in a cinematic way. And I think that really speaks to the just profound visceral effect that these first 15 minutes have on a viewer. It is a real tour de force. It is perhaps, I mean, I've said this before, but I really do believe this, that it is quite possibly a contender for the greatest opening in a film ever. I mean that. I really mean that. It has a power and a rhythm, and the film just catches you immediately, and you realize that Dario Argento is in control. He is the master, and he's guiding you and manipulating you and toying with you, and you're just thrown into this world without remorse and without any real regret on the part of the filmmaker. You're left to your own devices in the world of Dario Argento's Suspiria. So off the bat, we get this story, which I think seems to a lot of people to be a mix between a giallo film and a supernatural horror film. And I think I would not necessarily disagree with that kind of assessment. I think there is a giallo type of element to the film, because we get the policemen that come and talk about or trying to investigate the murder of Pat Hingle, and we get this odd unknown killer aspect of the film, and we get that again later, I think, when we're following the character of Sarah around the school. But I should say that this film I don't think is a giallo film. It is not a giallo film in the sense that there is a murder and there is a mystery, and therefore the film is about solving the mystery. I think it's a little bit broader than that. It's more about there is some odd things going on, and we realize that the reason why these odd things are going on is because of this, and that this, which we will later learn, is something to do with the how does it pronounced? Well, it's the occult, or as some characters say in the film, the occult. And so that's the extent to which I think the giallo interpretation goes, at least as far as I'm willing to accept that interpretation. So I don't think it's a giallo film in the truest sense, but it is a supernatural horror film with giallo elements. Along the way, of course, we do get a lot of the Argento style, which by now has already congealed into a real lovely portfolio, if you will, of Argento tricks of the trade. Already we have the main character witnessing something that he or she does not understand the significance of until the latter half of the film. So specifically here we get Susie Bannion witnessing Pat Hingle leaving the school as she's saying something about the secret and irises, and of course this becomes very significant, incredibly important towards the end of the film with respect to how to find the secret passage that leads to the mystery in the heart of this academy. There are also, I think, callbacks to Hitchcock here as well. Remember in films like The Cat O' Nine Tails, we had callbacks to Hitchcock with focuses, or with the focus on, let's say, glasses of beverage, of milk in that sense. Here we get focusing on wine and sharp, deep close-ups on wine. So this is another trick that I think recalls early Hitchcock films like Suspicion and Notorious. Oh, yes, and then we also have another example, I think, of a murder that occurs in an unexpected way. So if you recall, in a film like The Cat O' Nine Tails, we had a very shocking and very famous scene involving a murder that takes place in broad daylight in public view at a train station. So that's probably the last place you'd expect a murder to take place, right? Because it's in full view of everyone. There is also a similar kind of shot that occurs in a later film, in Tenebrae, when we have a character that is in this wide open expanse of like a public space, and it's daylight, and yet there is going to be a kind of a murder that happens. Well, the same is true in this film as well. There's a very famous scene involving the blind pianist, and he is with his guide dog, because and they're walking, and all of a sudden they're in the middle of this public square at night. There's no one there, but they're in the middle of this place, and it's deserted, and suddenly the music is rising in intensity, so you know that there's something that's going to go down that's not going to be good, and so this is another scene of suspense and foreboding that's taking place in this huge wide expanse. It's not an old dark house. There are no hallways. Everything is wide, and you don't know what's going to come. So I think that is a nice twist on that Argento kind of cinematic trait that we've already been seeing. There's sometimes going to be danger and murder even in these wide open spaces where you wouldn't necessarily expect murders to occur. Then, of course, we have the just general flourishes of Argento's camera and cinematic visual style. And it just comes in the most remarkable of places, sometimes just so ordinary, and yet I think it's just those flourishes that he adds to these otherwise ordinary scenes that I think are just remarkable. For example, the shot of the camera gliding along the pool or the water as Susie and Sarah are swimming. And it's a very odd thing because we get them close up, and then we get them as they walk into the water, and then we keep going with them as they swim together and talk. And then if you recall, then we cut to a shot of them overhead, and we see them swimming, and we hear the music, so we assume that something ominous is occurring. But that shot of them swimming and the camera seeming gliding over the surface of the water is really haunting, and it's quite beautiful, I would say. Also, there's one scene where Susie meets one of Sarah's psychiatrist friends, Dr. Frank Mandel, who's played very memorably by Udo Kier. And so, so this is the scene where they go out, and then suddenly there's a shot way up high overhead when Frank is introducing Susie to another one of his colleagues who is an expert in the occult. And so that is a really sharp overhead shot that is reminiscent, I think, of a shot in North by Northwest, if you know that Hitchcock film. There's a shot in that film where the hero, Roger Thornhill, played by Cary Grant, runs out of the United Nations. And so there's this huge overhead shot when that occurs. Well, that overhead shot seems to be repeating here in Suspiria. And so that is just a remarkable scene. And then when Susie is then talking to this colleague about witches and about Helena Marcos, who was this very famous black queen, you remember that the camera then is closing in on the reflection of these two characters, as they're reflected on the glass of the outside of the building. And now think about this. The camera is going in onto the reflection of those two people. This is a very difficult thing to do. And so, because as you can probably imagine, if you go in on a reflection, the chances are very high that the camera will also be seen reflected in the mirror or the window. And so this is quite a difficult thing to do. I think if you look closely, though, you'll see that there seems to be some kind of box that's being employed, and the camera is inside that box, and the box is covered, I think, with like black velvet or something that's black enough that won't pick up when it's being shot. So I think the camera therefore is filming within that protection. So even if it goes into the reflected image, it won't appear because it's protected by being surrounded by this black velvet covering, I think. But I think that's a real ingenious thing to do, because that again is another way that the film subverts expectations in a really unexpected way. It's just almost a throwaway scene, because the scene is purely narrative exposition regarding the background of Helena Marcos. And then, of course, you've got these other set pieces in the film that are just legendary. You have the shot with the maggots. Suddenly, you don't expect this. You don't expect this kind of thing to come on. You have a film that is about like witchcraft and murder and all this, and then suddenly you get this little oddly placed, maybe 5-10 minute sequence that's devoted to this whole incident with maggots that are falling from the ceiling. It's one of the most chilling things. And you've got the shots of the maggots falling in the hair, and it's just thinking about it now just gives me the creeps. And the more you think about, the maggots are a great example, because the more you think about the narrative of the film, the more you realize that it really makes absolutely no sense. Who would put meat in the attic, right? Well, why would you put meat in the attic? I don't know. So it makes more sense to put it in like the kitchen freezer or something. But if you put it in the attic, well, of course it's probably going to be prone to rotting. So of course, the set piece involving Sarah, again, Stefania Cassini, just one of the most just charismatic, lovely, one of the most beautiful actresses I have ever seen. And her role here as Sarah is just really nice. You know, I once read that names that begin with the letter S are the names of snakes. So that's a quote from a line in the film, for those of you who know it. And so her name is Sarah. And we sympathize with her immediately because she's very likable and she's very friendly with Susie Bannion from the outset. And Susie, right? Susie as a character is a bit of a how should I put it? She's a bit of a useless character for the most part because she's being like drugged, I think, and she's always sleepy and groggy and sick. So it's really up to Sarah to pick up the reins and be our guide through the first maybe third or 2/3 of the film at least. And so we really follow her and we really root for her. So therefore, when the stuff that happens to her, it really is very shocking. And by that point, I'm so emotionally involved with her that when though these really shocking events happen, it's just so, it is so shocking and it's so sad when it happens. But it's, again, just another one of these really crazy, ludicrous things. You know, she's being pursued by this mysterious figure, and it's quite eerie, and you've got the flashing lights, and again, it's dark, and you've got these weird lights coming in, green and red and orange, and you've got the wonderful close-up of the bulb, the light bulb, as it goes out and it goes on, and you know, I'm probably I don't know how they did that. Was it a real light bulb or was it a large, oversized light bulb for the purpose of filming? I'm not sure. But that reminds me so much of the shot. There's a very famous shot in the Alfred Hitchcock film Spellbound with, it's not a light bulb, but it's a pistol that's being held by a particular person. So you've got that wonderful shot of the pistol. Well, the camera, as it glides up to the light bulb on the ceiling, it's a very similar kind of effect, I think, to that Hitchcock film. And then, of course, we get other things in this sequence involving Sarah. You know, the killer is trying to get at her, and she's locked herself in the room, and you've got the killer putting the razor or the knife through the opening in order to try to open the latch. So this is very reminiscent, if you recall, of a certain scene in the film The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, when the killer is trying to get through the door with the knife. So there's another nice callback. But here we get one of those at once both just terrifyingly iconic and ludicrous, almost laughably ludicrous at the same time. You've got Sarah just jumping into a room filled with barbed wire, and she just can't escape, and of course from there she is succumb. But just this odd image of barbed wire in the middle of nowhere, really. It's dream logic to the nth degree. And you know, by this time, of course, we can believe anything that we see, and so it is just a frightening end to a character that we just love so much, and that's Sarah, played by Stefania Cassini. And so this is again another example, right, of the dream logic that is at play here in this really wild ride of a film. And then we get to the climax, and we realize that this school is really a witch's coven, and it's run by a bunch of witches, and the head of the coven is Helena Marcos. And so we get Susie Bannion and her final confrontation with the witches, you know, some of this stuff is just completely bonkers. We've got the the wonderful gravelly voice of Helena Marcos when Susie Bennion finally goes into her room. And I love that. I love that sort of odd aggressiveness, and she sounds like just a heavy smoker, and I love the decor of her room. It's just so oddly baroque, and you've got that odd bird statue. That's another kind of callback to the bird with the crystal plumage. And then you've got these weird balls that are like, I don't know, pool balls, and they go and they fall across the floor, and they wake Helena Marcos up, and it's kind of a frightening thing. And then just everything just collapses in terms of logic, because everything suddenly becomes a sea of illogical mayhem. Because then you suddenly see Sarah and the things in her eyes, and she comes back from the dead, and she's this kind of zombie killer. We've got Pablo's wandering around with the lighter that he stole, and then we've got the witches trying to put a spell on Susie, but not quite doing the job, and you've got all these odd things going on, and then Helena Marcos comes in, and she's invisible, but then we for some reason we see the outline of her figure when there's lightning or thunder from somewhere, I don't know. And then boom, we get the final touch of the thrust through the neck, and we see this old shriveled up lady just dying before our eyes, and that just horrible kind of gasping, that last gasp of life. And then the school suddenly just destroys, and everyone dies, and everything's falling apart, and Susie just gets the heck out of there. And the music is just that wonderful that wonderful pulsating goblin music, and then suddenly Susie runs out, and then she's in the rain, and she's just laughing, and then boom, behind her the building is on fire, and there's a window that explodes, and we hear screams, and then great. And then the wonderful thing, you have been watching Suspiria. This is the this is cinematic heaven to the max, is it not? This is a true delight. This is you're just on the edge of your seat, and you're laughing, and it's just so crazy and ludicrous and just so lacking in logic, and but you're still with the film. That's the incredible thing about this. You're still with the film 110%. I feel so lucky to be able to watch this film and to be able to own this film on Blu-ray and DVD. I just feel so fortunate to have been exposed to this film at a young age, and to be able even now to enjoy this film. I feel so privileged and honored to be able to share in the joy that is this magnificent horror film called Suspiria. And I don't know, I have nothing but high praise, and I am just so in awe of this film, and I will, I think, forever be in awe of this powerful cinematic experience. So this is Suspiria. So you have been watching a video about Suspiria. If you have any questions or comments about this magnificent film, or if you want to ask questions of me, please feel free to leave comments and questions below, and I will be very happy to address those to the best of my ability. I know that you're busy, so again, even if it's just for a little bit, thank you very much for spending some of your precious time with me today. I really appreciate it, my friends. So I hope you are having a great month of October, and that you are happy and healthy and well, and watching a lot of great scary movies. And as always, if you have any recommendations for titles or things that I should see, please feel free to let me know at any time. It is my pleasure to continue to be educated by you out there, the great film fans, the great fans of cinema in this wonderful wonderful online community. So yes, let's keep those fires alive, and please let me know if you have any recommendations. So therefore, let me end it there, and next time I'll be talking about Inferno in this Dario Argento film video series. Until then, my friends, take care, and happy Halloween. Cheers.